program, and it will be posted hopefully by tomorrow evening on the Health Trust Fund page on Facebook. And it will also hopefully be posted on the Door County Scottie Rally website as a way of us just, again, increasing exposure for this great program that we have presented for you. Couple of housekeeping details. I do want to ask you all to make sure that your phones or devices are muted. Again, because we are recording this, that sort of implies that you are giving consent to being seen visually or having your question read at the end of the presentation. The other thing is we are encouraging you to post your questions that you have of either Marcia or Michael in the chat session or the chat button down below at the bottom of your screen. And when they're done with their presentation, I will be helping to moderate those questions. So they will all get answered. We promise you about that. I think that's all I have to say. So I'm going to turn things over to our two esteemed trustees.
Thank you, Michelle. Welcome, everybody. We are happy to be here today to bring you some information we hope you will find interesting. Hopefully we'll stimulate a discussion and we can answer questions that you may have. We are going to talk today about the STCA's Health Trust Fund's DNA Bank and database. And the subtitle to this talk is All Scottie DNA Matters. And that is exactly correct. All Scottie DNA counts and is important to us. And we're going to show that and why that is the case as we go along.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'll introduce, thank you for joining us. And I look at the presentation as a conversation, mostly the screen everyone can read. So we're not going to read things to you. Might highlight a few things that we think are important, but it'll be mostly a conversation that Marcia and I have a dialogue. We've originated all this material over the last 5 or 6 years of we've been working on this. So we've got a lot of time invested in it, and it's really become labor of love for the Scottish Terrier breed. So I guess we'll move on, right, Marcia?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Just for a little background information for those of you who are not familiar with our organization, the Health Trust Fund was established by the STCA in October of 1994, as a non-for-profit 501c3 organization with the following mission. As Michael said, I'm not just going to read the page, but I have highlighted a few important items from our mission statement. Obviously, the Health Trust is about health issues in the dogs. We are all about communicating health information to the Scottie world at large. Our purpose is to monitor health of the Scottish Terrier through registries and databases and so on and so forth. But the heart of the Health Trust Fund is to support research to enhance the understanding, prevention, and cure of diseases for the betterment of our dogs. And the very last bullet point, we are here to advocate for the future health and preservation of our dogs. Those two highlighted bullets are basically what we're talking about today.
I became involved with the Scottish Terrier breed about, 7 years or maybe 8 years ago. I'd always wanted to own a Scottie, and eventually I was in a situation where I could. And I became interested in the Scottish Terrier breed and the genetics behind it, because I'm a geneticist, an animal geneticist, mostly specializing in genomic research, DNA sequencing, and genotyping of animals. So as we got involved with, as I was asked to join the Health Trust Fund committee, and I was honored to do so. We started looking at research projects and things like that that are ongoing with the Scottish Terrier. So I'll let Marcia talk about some of the programs that's already been funded.
In this slide, just gives you a quick idea of what the Health Trust has accomplished in the last almost 30 years. Obviously, we are supporting important research on health issues that very much impact our dogs. Bladder cancer, TCC, lymphoma, hemangiosarcoma, and there are other cancers that are seriously important. We have supported and continue to support Scotties-specific research like Scottie cramp, CMO, cerebellar abiotrophy, elevated liver enzymes in our dogs. And there's many other studies that we have supported through the years through the AKC Canine Health Foundation. We have contributed to those studies. They're more general, broad studies for all breeds of dogs, very worthy studies and worthy of our funding. We have hosted health seminars and webinars to disseminate information to the Scottie world at large. We have given grants for bladder screening clinics and health seminars over the years. And we also support our breeders with discounted tests, DNA tests for the chick OFA and chick registries. Of course, we publicize articles, we write information. We have a social media page. We have a newsletter that we put out quarterly. So we try to get as much information and education as we can to as many people as possible.
I think it's kind of interesting to me, you know, when you first look at this slide and you see some of the lists of things that we look into, and you get a little it's a little daunting or kind of like, wow, what's going on within the breed. But as I've become involved with this, I've realized in researching other breeds, lots of breeds have lots of different things going on. Some of them we're in common with the Scottie. So it became kind of obvious that most of these things kind of travel amongst all the breeds. And so it's not as intimidating as it looks. But I do think that over the time that I've been involved with it, we have really, Marcia's led the committee, and really we've stepped up the game of communication through the bagpiper and providing a newsletter. And we're really trying to bridge that gap in communication with anyone who's interested in Scottish Terriers.
We just went right past Dr.
There we go. Sorry.
This is just an example of important research, important to all of us. I know it's near and dear to Michelle, bladder cancer research. And this is Dr. Debbie Knapp, for those of you who don't know her, up at Purdue. And this is a project that we have supported very largely throughout the years. As long as I've been involved with the trust, we have been contributing to her research on bladder cancer. She has made great strides in understanding it. She's a super vet, a super oncologist. She loves the dogs, and it's a wonderful hero for this particular issue in our Scotties. So as an example, this is what the Health Trust can do and has been doing and will continue to do.
Sorry, Marcia, I'm finding out on my mouse, if I click it, it jumps forward fast. So there, if I just roll it just a little bit.
Maybe just the space bar. So anyway, this slide is bringing us now to the DNA bank. How did we get to here? How did we get to this point? That's the question. This goes back about 6 years ago. We decided, the STCA decided, the STCA board decided that we needed to find the answer to the question, where have all the Scotties gone? It seemed as though there were fewer and fewer Scotties around, and we knew it was an important question, so we decided to find out what was going on. Next slide. The president of the STCA at the time, Lori Kelly, put together a strategic planning committee, and Michael and I co-chaired that committee with the following objectives. We wanted to generate data to support and categorize the decreasing number of Scotties. we wanted to determine the contributing factors. What has led to this decline?
Yeah, what has?
And what are the consequences? What are the consequences to all Scottie lovers, breeders, the world at large, as far as this breed is concerned? Our aims were to develop recommendations to the parent club, to the STCA, so that we could recommend how to promote the breed, encourage and support our breeders. We wanted to have more outreach to the Scottie world at large, and we wanted to preserve the genetic heritage of our breed.
This quest actually began over the dinner. I was at the table in Montgomery, Alabama, or Montgomery show, and Lori had just become president of the club, and I casually mentioned to her that it was would be really good to get a survey of what are the concerns and interests of the Scottish Terrier group of breeders and enthusiasts, so that we could understand their needs and become more focused and targeted in what we delivered as the STCA. And of course, of my interest in HTF, I think that's about the same year I was elected to elected to join it. And Marcia and I were co-chairs of the beginning. So we started with nothing. We had to basically generate a questionnaire and put it out to where people could answer. And that took a lot of work to get that generated. So Marcia, you want to talk about this?
Wow.
This graph really kind of depicts the some sense of concern that we had that we could quantify, and the reduction of number of dogs and numbers being registered over the years. Marcia's more familiar with the back end history than I am. I kind of pick up in about 2013, 2014, and Marcia, you can comment on your thoughts about how all these numbers
Smaller litter size?
dropped.
That doesn't make sense.
This is, if you think, I mean, this is about 30 years here of AKC registrations. Okay, these are registered Scottish Terriers, litters and dogs. The blue are the litters, the orange are the dogs. And this is data straight from the AKC. And this shows rather dramatically the sort of ski slope down in registrations. I have another chart that I did not include that shows the number of Scotties that were registered back in 1930. And it's way up there, way up.
Well, yeah.
So these numbers are definitely a downward trend. Although I would say in the last, I don't know, maybe about the last 10, 15 years, things have sort of leveled out. But we still see that the numbers are way down in Scottie registrations. So
when we saw this graph, it really prompted the question, where have all the Scotties gone? And I should mention that this is AKC registrations, but there are, as we found out in our survey, other places where people do register dogs. And not just the AKC, but this is AKC. This is the stalwart of the canine industry. So this is kind of the one we're focused on. Where have all the Scotties gone? And that's what we set out to try to answer.
This
Marshall,
graph, this chart basically graphically shows the answers to a survey that we put together. And this was one question on the survey: what has contributed to the decline in numbers and popularity? And we had a total of over 5,000 responses to this particular question. And if you look at it, it's a big chart. We're not going to go into great detail here with this, because that could be all day long discussion by itself. But if you look at the big chunks, the big color, the big pie pieces, Scotties are difficult to find. That's obvious. Okay, we're looking at where they've all gone. Well, people don't have them because they can't find them. as the Scotties have reduced in numbers, so the costs have gone up. And that also becomes a problem for people to be able to bring Scotties into their homes and families if they can't afford them. There are other issues here having to do with behavior and so on and so forth. But basically, we have a big problem there. There are not enough breeders producing Scotties, and they're out of sight, out of mind. Scotties are rarely seen. You may have had the experience walking down the street with your Scotties when people don't even know what they are anymore. We're competing against the doodle dogs in popularity, all the crossbreds that people are producing. And this breed just doesn't have the popularity that it once did. So that's also part of the lack of the numbers that we see. But we did need to know, what are the health issues? The health issues is what we were really mining out of this survey. And there are health issues that discouraged people from getting the breed, from producing the dogs.
I think from this pie chart for the STCA board, they were able to see some of the places where they could put some assistance with marketing, advertising, and information about the Scottish Terrier breed. And for us, as the Health Trust Fund Committee, it really it focused us in on the health issues, that there's too many health issues. So we had to dissect that out, which we'll do in a little bit. But interestingly enough to me is the fact that availability of dogs, they couldn't find pups, couldn't find them. And then cost. If you look at the blue, the big blue pie and the big orange, you know, they can't find them. And then when they do, they're too expensive. So that's kind of a, that's something we can't address as the Health Trust Committee, but it was something that the larger body of the STCA board can address, and breeders themselves. But we did sort of kind of jump into behavioral things and also health issues that we needed to focus on, that we could focus on and maybe make a difference.
This this chart, it will show the results from the same survey, 4,000 responses to question that's asked, what are the most commonly reported health issues in the past 10 years in your dogs? And this was everybody. This was breeders, this was companion owners, this were people that got involved in performance and conformation, in just walking their dogs down the street. This was everybody in their responses, which was a very important snapshot for the Health Trust to know these are the major health issues as of 6 years ago. Okay, this is 2017. And when you look at this chart, you'll see elevated liver enzymes, Cushing's, atypical Cushing's. Liver issues are probably, well, they have been for a long time, the most commonly reported health concern in the dogs. Bladder cancer being in second place. And then we come down to allergies in third place, but we do have liver disease in fourth place, and that included cancers and other problems. So if you combine the liver enzyme issue and the liver disease information, I mean, liver by far and away is a part of this breed that we need to focus on and try to figure out as much as possible. Why is this going on with these dogs? Why do we have this much issue with this particular breed? But as you go down, you can see all of the other factors that came along and were mentioned. There was a lot more that were mentioned. This is just the top numbers. And this was what the Health Trust needed to know. This is what we needed to focus our attention and our dollars on.
Yeah, and it speaks to how we present our messaging and teasing out of some of the higher listed categories. You know, what are the contributing causes from environmental versus genetic, and how we can make a difference. The environmental side is basically trying to communicate what we can learn and scope from various publications, information about what to do and not to do, what to feed, how to expose the dogs and all those things. But then there are the basic genetic components that underlie some of these things, like liver disease, bladder cancer, complex traits that are, you know, need to be a lot of work has to be done on the back end, like is what is going on at Purdue. And then some simple inheritances that we've identified, like the Scottie cramp and things like that, that we think are much more simple, but they might not be. So we're so anyway, these last two slides kind of helped us get our arms around all this stuff and categorize it, so then we could put things in silos and say, here's your job, here's what we need to focus on, and how do we need to prioritize things. There we go.
And this kind of zeroes in on genetics of the breed.
Yeah.
In this particular survey, a huge majority of breeder respondents indicated that genetic diseases and defects are of critical importance to them. Breeders are concerned about a genetic bottleneck, which is basically what happens when very few dogs are used frequently. A few popular sires used by breeders, which can lead to detrimental effects on the health and longevity. And as our genetic pool shrinks, there's less diversity, and more chance for some of the problematic mutations to really be manifested. There is a strong
Sorry, go ahead, Marcia.
There was a strong desire for more education on basic genetics and genomics by breeders and the respondents, not just breeders. How can these tools help us produce healthier dogs? And ultimately, there was a large percentage that felt the time had come for a Scottie DNA bank to preserve our breed's genetics and monitor and maintain control over our own dog's genetic material.
I think when it comes down to, for those Scottish Terrier enthusiasts who concentrate on breeding and showing dogs, it's the same in the livestock industry as it is in canine, and is when you put selection together and use various schemes, line breeding, breeding likes to likes, and maybe focusing on certain ancestors that have a track record and traits that you're trying to capture, you tend to consolidate their genetics and create a more homogeneous gene pool in future generations. And so what happens is you really discover in that process where gene mutations occur that can be, some are deleterious and some are not. And that's in the old days of genetics, when we didn't have DNA, we didn't have a way of really focusing on the exact DNA code. Breeders used to do line breeding and inbreeding, sire versus daughter matings and things like that, basically to tease out the genetics that were not good. And then that's in the livestock industry. And then to eliminate those from the gene pool. You can't do that in dogs. I mean, that's just, dogs bridge into a more emotionally involved. They're a member of your family. So those, the baggage of genetics kind of comes along and through the generations. And we have to, we love our dogs. So they're a part of the family. And what we really learned from this was, where to focus our research to try to, on the back end where breeding is occurring, to find some genetic tools that these folks can use to manage their selection and mating processes going forward and create a more healthy dog in the process. And those are not easy tasks to solve, but that's why we did what we did, and we'll talk more about the DNA bank as we go forward.
Okay. So this, we're now getting ready to come up with our justification for having a DNA bank. And the problem that we have had to deal with as Scottie owners
Oh my God.
is going through the usual scenario where we have a researcher that has identified an issue that they want to conduct their research and their study, and they need samples. So there's a calling out for Scottie samples, and our Scottie owners and breeders are dedicated, willing helpers. So everyone sends off their samples. They go to their vets and they send their samples off to the researcher. And we all have signed a waiver when we do that. When you send that blood sample off, you sign a waiver saying basically, I'm giving it up to this researcher for the benefit of the breed, and with the hope that some good answers will be found. And there have been some answers found. Absolutely. Over the years, there have been some very good answers found. The BWD project, for example, was one.
Oh my God.
However, there is no oversight. Once that blood is in samples are sent off, there's no oversight on how the DNA is used or where any leftover DNA will be, how it will be used or how it will be distributed for other projects. So that we have no control over what's left. We have no access to the DNA, and those dogs are no longer alive.
Yeah.
So what happens is you have a researcher 10, 15 years ago looking at, say, for example, cerebellar abiatrophy. And lots of people stepped up, sent a lot of samples to that researcher. And unfortunately, nothing came of that research, which happens with research. We know that. Sometimes research is ruling something out rather than finding the answers. But we never ever had access to that DNA again, and those families are gone. So we've got to start from scratch on particular diseases, getting new samples. And that's, an important part of the DNA bank today that we're going to talk about.
Like
Marcia,
Marcia,
can I interrupt you for just 1 second? There is one person on the program, and I don't want to embarrass you, but your name is Kathy, and that's all we know about you. Whatever device you're on, could you please mute it? Because we hear everything, dogs barking, your comments, etc. Thank you.
like Marcia said, we took a look at all the programs that we've been involved in research-wise, and we have a really aggressive, interested group of people involved with Scotties that want to contribute, want to help. And what was happening is that, like Marcia said, we were losing control of the materials. And so it would go to the researcher, and then the researcher ends up with all the DNA, all the samples and everything, and they actually transferred ownership of them over to the researcher. So if we wanted to take some of those samples and try another research approach, we had to start from scratch every time. And it becomes pretty clear as technologies develop that there's always more ways to skin a cat, so to speak. There could be a new way to approach the same problem that might lead to a better outcome or a more informative outcome. But we can't keep just starting from scratch every time. So the logic that we decided or discussed was, let's build a DNA repository. Let's create a database to where we can collect information on those DNAs, the life history of that particular Scottie, everything that we can know. And that way even if it's 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, or 100 years from now, we got a place to come back and say, I need that sample, this sample, and this sample, because that information recorded is important right now. And we can use that information and this new technology that's just been developed, and we might be able to get the answer. And this, as we looked at it, became a mechanism actually as an asset to the breed, because it creates an encyclopedia for the future. And it also is something we can transfer in generationally forward and preserve the heritage, preserve our breed, and hopefully make it better. That's our goal.
So this slide asks the question, how will it benefit the breed? We have a couple of pictures here of sort of an older style Scottie, some of the original ancestors, and then the more current model. And these are idealized, obviously. Well, the one on the bottom is. The one on the top is an actual dog. But having a DNA bank of our dogs of this breed will provide ample, high quality DNA for current and future health research needs. There'll be, as Michael said at one time, buckets of DNA available on our dogs.
And the neat thing about it is, once you put your DNA in, you don't ever have to do it again. You don't have to collect a sample from your dog. All you have to do is add information to the database as your dog goes on. But we don't have to do it again. It's there. Buckets of DNA. Sorry, Marcia. Just wanted to drill that home one time. And then from that sample, we can send out subsamples to various researchers on that dog in projects that we can closely monitor and gather information and hopefully solve problems. Go ahead, Marcia. Sorry.
Well, basically this DNA bank, and it couldn't happen, I'll say, without a geneticist being on the Health Trust. Michael was the moving force for this entire project with his contacts and understanding of what we needed. And we will be forever in his debt because of that. And what he basically had the vision to do here was to establish a Health Trust, HTF, and owner-directed participation in health research projects. And we'll go more into detail about who owns the DNA, so on and so forth. But this was how this DNA bank would benefit the breed and the owners of these dogs. This DNA bank would preserve the ancestral DNA, and here we go. And we would be able to use it to trace. Back, just one.
Sorry.
1 second back.
I hit that little scroll. It's there we go.
There we go. I just wanted to mention that using the DNA bank and the database that's involved with it, we will be able to, we and the future health trustees will be able to trace the genes and mutations that are inherited from generation to generation, from the way back beginning to the current dogs to the future dogs. So.
And that's good genes and bad genes. Mutations, there could be, in the future, we might identify some traits, some behavioral traits that are really, we want to accentuate in the future generations by whatever means of discovery. And boy, we can reach back and find the right pedigrees that worked and help breeders and Scottish Terrier enthusiasts in the future. So it has benefit all the way around.
Go ahead, Michael. You're going to talk about
so the Scottie DNA Bank is just a repository of DNA collected from your Scottish Terrier. All Scottish Terriers or Scottish Terrier derivatives can participate and be a part of this. It's not just for registered, it's for all Scotties and people who want to be a part of it, both registered and not registered. And we'll get into the details, but we've tried to think through and provide accommodation for all various types of tissue samples. The most preferred sample we'll talk about is the blood sample. But that's because we have really a rich source of DNA that's very high quality for DNA sequencing purposes and things down the road. And so that's why we focus on blood, and we'll talk about that some more. But this is an entire collection of anybody who has a Scottish Terrier that they want to participate in the future, or now and in the future, with their dog. We welcome everyone, and we'll talk to you about how that can happen going forward. So preferred tissue samples, like I said, is the whole blood. People would like to be the cheek swab. And let me just address why the cheek swab is not particularly good in a DNA data bank like this. Is typically that DNA is, we don't get as much DNA from a cheek swab. You might get enough for a single test, but we're needing buckets of DNA. And when I say buckets in terms of micrograms or of DNA, we need to do a particular study or a sequencing event. It requires a certain portion of DNA that we can take out of that bucket of DNA that we collect. And a cheek swab just gives us a much smaller source to start with, and it can be somewhat damaged, okay? And it can be also a little bit contaminated. So we prefer to stay with whole blood. That's something that we can use. And then on male dogs, we can use semen. That's got a pile of DNA in it, so that's really good. It's all high quality. And then, of course, whole tissue, skin tissue, a small ear punch, a liver, piece of liver, or something like that. And Scotties that are have passed away, quickly recovered at time of when they pass, can be very valuable sources and very good sources of high quality DNA. As a matter of fact, you can, it's kind of interesting. I'll tell a sub story here. Back in my days when I was in the cloning business and cattle, I had a guy call me that basically he had saved an ear from a calf in his freezer for, I guess, about 6 months, and he wanted to clone from that. So that we had to negotiate a different discussion there, but the fact was the DNA was very high quality. We couldn't actually use it to put in a cell culture, but those tissues, they're very valuable to us and to the DNA base. And we hate it that all the Scottie will pass away, but they do. But you're not, if you act quickly or work with your veterinarian, a sample can be captured. And we have special protocols. We'll work with you. Marcia and I will work directly to get that sample into the lab and DNA extracted. And we have protocols for semen, but the whole blood is really easy to get from a dog, and you can do it live. So the samples we store them a couple of different ways. We have the ability to store DNA in what's liquid nitrogen tanks. That's very cold, ultra low freezers. But right now, the way we're doing it is in liquid nitrogen and ultra low freezers. We have samples, but we've also, with working with the company Rosero, they have a dehydration storage method where we can store it in that form. So what we have done is when you send your sample, a whole blood or whatever, we extract that DNA, the tissue, the DNA is extracted from that, and then we split it. and it's stored in a form in liquid nitrogen or high ultra low freezers. And then another subset of that DNA is stored in a dehydration method and kept in 2 different locations. In the case that something would go wrong with a freezer going down or a tank going empty on nitrogen, we might lose the samples. So we have the backup, we have the dry, right? So we thought about that process. So we don't want to collect those dogs, have a mishap at the laboratory with some mechanical malfunction, lose the sample. So we have 2 different sets going in parallel on the same dog in different forms. So jump in anytime, Marcia, if I miss something. We searched out in the world and found a company that wanted to work with us to develop this. They're located in Salt Lake City, Recero Genomics, and they're a subsidiary of United Bio Research Institute. They work in human work, a lot of human work. They have branched out into the livestock and the companion animal now through us. So we developed with them the basics of the DNA base, and they're a private owned company, so we have direct access to them, and we interact with them by getting reports from them on a monthly basis, plus anytime we pick up the phone and call, if we have a question, we can get it answered. And they also allow us the individual attention for various samples that we need to track into the lab that maybe don't come from blood or what have you. But they've been a valuable source for us. We basically started at ground zero. There was no place else that there was a DNA base. I don't know how long we took, Marcia, maybe 6 months to just set up all the criteria for how to run this DNA repository and answer a lot of questions about ownership and things like that. And it's important that everyone knows that when you put your sample in here, it's still your sample, okay? And we have certain things, and we'll talk about that, where if we share management of that with you, but the information in that DNA sample belongs to the owner of the dog, okay? And there's only after huge amount of time and things like that before that DNA actually transfers into control and ownership of the Scottish Terrier HTF. So, but it's important to know that when you put a sample in there, it's under your name, it's for your dog, and at any time you can take it out, you can do what you want to do with it. We are co-working with you in order to have access to that DNA, and we'll explain that in a little bit. So Marcia, you were pretty instrumental in working through this, and this really, this system here really added some flexibility to sample collection.
Well, these are the kits. When you hear us talking about ordering up a sample kit or requesting a sample kit, these are free kits that we will send to you. Michelle is helping with this now. She's taking on a large share of shipping these kits, and I also am sending kits. And inside the kit, you will receive an agreement form, a submission form that goes with the tube or your sample. There'll be full instructions, packaging materials, a letter to your veterinarian explaining what this is about. The shipping box, as I said, the Health Trust pays for processing of this DNA when it gets to Recero, and we pay for the storage, the annual storage fee for the DNA. So basically, the owner is responsible for whatever your vet charges for drawing the blood and your UPS shipping costs, which can go first class. And if you go to the next slide, Michael, this is a wonderful magical tube that we are sending and using. This is actually a human grade DNA tube. Once the blood is put inside this tube, once the whole blood is drawn and put into the tube, it's inverted about 8 times by your veterinarian. That DNA then, from that point on, the DNA is stabilized. So it does not have to be handled in any kind of special way, does not have to be refrigerated. It does not have to be sent with expedited, expensive shipping to get to the DNA bank. It can go first class, which is the cheapest way to send a little box. Normally, I'm seeing about $3 to $4, $5 for shipping the box, depending on where you are in the country. Total amount of blood that fills these tubes is 2.5 cc's, which is not very much. We were talking about buckets of DNA, but 2.5 cc's of whole blood will yield buckets of
DNA, you bet. And where we get DNA, just for those, so you know, is not from the red blood cells, but from the white blood cells. And there's usually a lot of white blood cells in the blood. And those are the lymphocytes that contain, that are being basically have both copies of the parents' DNA, and it's very, very high quality. These tubes really make it easy on the end of, for the customers that are people that are collecting these samples and sending them in, because it really eliminated all the hassle of putting things on ice and having to store them in a special way. As long as you properly mix them when you collect it, stabilize the DNA, like Marcia said, you can just toss them on the shelf, and you don't have to worry about it. It's that makes it really easy. In the livestock industry, we have some of these guys that actually they throw their samples up on the dashboard of their pickup truck, and that's probably not a good idea, because you're going to have a lot of heat, a lot of cold, and extremes will damage DNA. But by and large, if you just collect sample and keep it at a stable room temperature, and then ship it, it all works out just fine. We end up with buckets of DNA on the other end.
And again, this is how we can get the sample kits to you. You can email Michelle. Most of you folks are Door County folks, so you're going to know her email address probably by heart. My email address is there. We can also take orders for kits at National Specialties, at our Health Trust table, and other Scottie gatherings like the Door County Scottie Rally. Coming soon, we will have an online registration and kit ordering process. We don't have that in place yet, but we will at some point. And new for this year, for 2023, the Health Trust is offering grants to clubs and groups who want to organize a blood draw clinic. And if they do, we will supply all of the materials that they need, as well as a $500 grant to help cover the costs for whoever ends up drawing the blood. And on the next page, this is an example of a club that's decided this is what they were going to do. And this is happening next Saturday at Scottish Terrier Club of California, at their spring puppy match, which they have every year. It's a really big deal for this club. And they are going to have a DNA collection clinic. And so I sent everything they needed, box full of tubes and information. They will have a person there to draw, a technician to draw the blood. And they will package it all up and send it all at one time, which is huge savings in shipping costs for everybody. It does not have to be a veterinarian to draw this blood. It certainly can be, but a lot of times in a lot of vet clinics, it's actually the technicians that are the better phlebotomists. They know how to get blood drawn even better than doctors do. So it's just got to be somebody that really knows what they're doing and can hit that jugular vein in a Scottie quickly without a lot of struggle. And only 2.5 cc's, which is really not much when you figure 5 cc's is a teaspoon. So it is available to clubs and groups for the entire year. I have the forms. If people want to request a form to apply for a grant, all they have to do is contact the Health Trust. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how will the DNA bank work? Who owns the DNA? Well, like I said earlier, you own the DNA. It's really yours. And we don't take ownership of it, but we take management of it. And if you transfer ownership, if somebody down the road wants to say just, hey, you can have those samples, that's fine. Then we'll take ownership and manage them the same way we had been managing it. We just provide the management service of all of this. So we have the gateway we need to properly distribute DNA and collect information on the dogs going forward, so that we have good health history and information, pedigree, what happened to the dog, what kind of health events it had. But no one has access to the DNA without permission. I mean, Rosero and the HTF will not send your DNA somewhere that you don't know about. So when we have an instance where we want to participate in a study, we're going to reach out and say, your dog is very important to this study. We want to make sure it's okay with you, but we're going to use some of your DNA. We'd like to use this amount of the DNA and allocate that to a study. And just so you know, that's going on. So that'll happen. And the committee, we're in the process right now of finalizing a formation of the R&D committee under a new management way that Marcia has put together for the HTF, and how we divide and conquer Scotty problems. And this committee will originate grants with people outside of the Scottish Terrier Club, and we will be a kind of a clearinghouse for people who say, I want some Scotty DNA to do a project, and we'll say, wait a minute, we'll step in and have a little management discussion, say, what are you going to do with this? And then how are we going to benefit back for the Scottish Terrier owners and the Scottish Terrier Club? And we want to be that kind of clearinghouse for all these projects that people get bombarded with about giving DNA or giving a sample to this for this project or that, and make sure that they're legitimate and they're going to reward and they're going to come back with some information or keep us informed of how the research is going. And then basically that it's a project that seems to be worthwhile. So we work together as a committee, and if we need expertise outside of this committee, we'll reach out into the world and find those people that can give us good advice on things. But we're not an island unto ourselves. So it's but we wanted to be able to have more formal control on how the samples go out, how the information comes back in, and if it comes back in. And so that's what we want to do with this DNA bank. It's very important that we manage our resources carefully, and the HTF will provide the funding for some research grants when we properly have them outlined and detailed, and we want to jump in on one. But if your dog is in a study, you're going to know about it up front and during and after conclusion of that study. And that's the important elements that we identified earlier that was somewhat missing from the way that things had been done in the past. Okay, Marcia.
These are some questions that have come up over the last couple of 3 years that are fairly good. They're good questions. If I send my dog sample, do I have to be part of the HTF managed account? No, you don't. You can opt out of the HTF managed account, and that's fine. You can use the DNA bank, the Scottie DNA bank, as your kind of personal DNA storage bank for your dog's samples. You will pay for processing, and you will pay for the annual storage fees. Those aren't huge fees, but still you'll be responsible for them. If you decide at some point that you would rather opt back into the managed account, you can do that. And you can also still be engaged in research that comes along if you decide you want your dog's sample to be included. But it is smoother and easier as far as access to the DNA if we take care of it and manage the account while keeping you in the loop all along. Another question I've gotten, for example, my 9-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, Scottie, is spayed or neutered. Can he or she still be included? Some people feel that only the breeding dogs, only the dogs that are being currently used for producing more Scotties are valuable. And the answer to that, of course, we want the DNA from all Scotties. Age has nothing to do with the DNA in that dog. Neuter status has nothing to do with the DNA in that dog. So those are all important contributions and important members of our DNA bank. This question, the third question, is a biggie for people who have dogs that maybe they got through rescue. I don't have any papers on my Scottie. In other words, he's not registered. Can he still be included? And Michael, I'd like you to take that one.
Okay. This is really important that we have a background of information on any Scottie or animal that might be part Scottie, or you don't even know. It's really important to collect that information, preserve it. We'll have initially, when you submit your sample, we'll ask for all the possible information we can. And then shortly, we're going to have actually online DNA database where you can go in and add information on your dog. It's the information that's really important. So even though you may not be a registered dog and we can't identify exact pedigree, in order for us to do some of the research we do to discover cause and effect of certain mutations or what have you, is we need a pedigree so we can trace ancestry. But then once we've kind of got some markers or some things where we say, hey, I think we have something that's predictive, that might say if they have this particular genotype, they will be susceptible or they will have some problem. Then we can use a population of Scotties like the unregistered Scotties that have indicated, oh, my dog had this and this and this. So then we can use them to validate our research on the purebred pedigreed dogs and say it's predictive back here on the unpedigreed, but the markers show up and the information recorded indicate that this dog had that disease. So that becomes a vote of confidence to us that we have something that then we can offer to the Scottie world, to the STCA members, and all people interested in Scotties as a tool for guiding along in the process of raising and having Scottie dogs. So it's you're just as important if you're unregistered as you are registered. It's just that we're able to utilize that information in different ways. And I wanted to come back to question number 1. Do you have to be a part of this HTF managed account? No, like Marcia said, but it basically, when you do become a part of it, we try to eliminate as much of the cost to the Scottie owners. We want you to participate, everyone. So if you opt in, I think Marcia can recap that better than me. We pay those costs, those storage costs, the extra extraction costs, and and we provide the kits, right, Marcia?
Mhm.
So basically, we're trying to take that burden. We know that people, you know, in these times and all times, that expenses are important for everyone. So we're trying to, you know, cover as much of that as we can and make it just as easy and seamless as possible to join in and be a part of this. And then, Marcia, you want me samples from other countries? I'll take that one a little bit.
Right.
And that's quite possible. We have I've worked with Rosero on getting import processes and approvals in place for many countries, like out of Europe and surrounding countries, Australia, New Zealand. The only problem we get into is when we import samples from countries that have diseases such as hoof and mouth disease, like in most of the countries in South America and some of the Middle Eastern countries. We have a little extra steps we have to go through, so they're not as easy. But we have some mechanisms in place for some of the countries where we can bring samples in, and they're already established. And we just have to work with you to know which country, work with your regulatory people there, and we have to get everybody on the same page with our regulatory people here, and then we can slide the samples into Utah. So if you're from another country and you want to join in and be a part of this, all you need to do is indicate, hey, I'd like to do it. And we will take personal, Marcia and I and Rosero, and make sure that we have the proper communication going on to make that as seamless as possible. And we actually encourage, if you're from another country and you want to participate with dogs from your country, they add tremendous value to this database and to the future of the breed, because generally they are animals that are coming from populations, genetics that are not familiar or not the same as in the US. Some have been imported and used in breeding, we understand, but it's really great to get a hold of DNA samples and information from Scotties with different pedigree backgrounds, because we can help your country and in the future, if we find markers, is to be able to apply them back in your country. And in the same manner we're going to do in the United States. But you can get together with a group and do a large group draw, and basically say, like, let's just take a country like England. If the English Scottish Terrier clubs all got together and said, we're going to collect up these samples and submit them as a group, that would eliminate a lot of paperwork, make things more easy to bring those samples in, and then we could just bring it in as a group and then continue to do so over time. So there are some ways to make this really easy, but you can be a part of this. You'll have the same access to the samples, control as if you're in the United States, and help us contribute to the future, international, worldwide future of the Scottish Terrier. So Marcia, anything I left out?
No. One thing I'd just like to say a little more about unregistered Scotties. I know people might be thinking, well, if it's not even a purebred Scottie, how can it be used for DNA work? And I think Michael hinted at that, saying is a derivative of the Scottie, or maybe there's some other breed within that Scottie. If that's okay, because if we're looking at something like a disease that Scotties are known for, like Scottie cramp, for example, if we have this population of dogs that we have kept track of in our database and we know who they are, we will be able, if we find a marker, we will be able to test that population of dogs that are mostly or maybe 100% Scottie, but they just don't have any provenance to show it. And they can, if you're looking for that particular marker in those dogs, it really doesn't make any difference if they're 100% Scottie or not. If they've got that marker, that's confirmation of what that, especially if that dog has Scottie cramp. And that's what's important about our database, is you're going to tell us all the health information on your dogs. as best you can and as much as you know. The rescue groups are fantastic in tracking and keeping in contact as far as health issues are concerned. And those are really important contacts, really important dogs. So don't think that because it's not a registered dog or a show dog or whatever, that it's not important, because that's not true. It's very important.
Yes, all information is important information on your dog. So if you happen to know what the genetic background might be, let's say, for instance, you have a Scottish Terrier Great Dane cross, that would be very interesting to know. And just to have it in the database on that dog. So all information is important information. If you don't know the breed history, that's fine. Just say so. And but it must be a Scottie. It looks like a Scottie. You've acquired it as a Scottie, and in our world, it's a Scottie. And all the information that you contribute has value to the overall outcomes. So please feel like you can be in this deal, in this program.
Okay.
And I really want to know how you end up with a Scottish Terrier by a Great Dane, if anybody knows how that happened.
This slide basically covers some of the research at the current time, in the near future, and in the distant future. We do have a Scottie Cramp project going on right now at Rosero. It has slowed down a bit for right now, but it will pick back up again when the personnel are squared away on that. Near future, well, we all have a wish list for our dogs. We would like to continue looking into the more serious life-threatening issues like bladder cancer, lymphoma, liver disease. Longevity issues and studies would be extremely beneficial for all dogs, but especially for our Scotties. And then Scottie-specific things like CA and other diseases like that. And as far as the future is concerned, way down the road, when we're not around doing this anymore, or maybe when we still are, we can talk about genome sequencing, which is basically opening up that encyclopedia that Michael mentioned, and providing a wealth of information to have in our library, so to speak. And then there's new frontiers and projects we haven't even thought of yet. This technology is changing so fast and developing so quickly that most of us can't keep up and fully understanding what it is that we're reading about. But it's a tremendous asset to our breed, to our club members, and to all the Scotties, the whole Scottie universe. This kind of project is extremely valuable.
So to tag on to what Marcia said, at the present time, we have a project going where we're trying to discover the underlying genetic cause for Scottie Cramp. We have belief based on anecdotal and breeder information that we've been able to assimilate that it maybe have a mode of inheritance of what we call a recessive or origin. In other words, when we get one copy, maybe not see it, but when we get two copies of whatever that mutation is, the dog shows Scottie Cramp. Okay, so that becomes a very simple, under today's technology, using DNA sequencing and comparing sequence with dogs that we know are carriers, dogs we know that have it, and dogs that we presume did not have it, and identify the patch of DNA that is somehow changed or modified. It could have a point mutation, it could be an inversion of a short run of DNA, whatever it is. So this is a project, it's kind of what we call a low-hanging fruit project, where we think we can have some success very quickly. And so that project is in the hands right now, and we're working through that, getting that figured out. Didn't take very many dogs, and we pulled out a subsample of dogs from the database and used it there. And then, of course, that wish list, there's a whole lot of things, prioritization that's going on. As you saw earlier, that wish list is kind of prioritized based on frequency of what people say are important. So we will tackle them with grants and things like that across the country. And just to look finally on the future. Today we can do DNA sequencing, we can compare, and all kinds of tools that we can use to hunt down mutations in DNA. As when I first started this, a process of sequencing a genome was costing $1 million just to sequence one. Today, we can sequence a genome for $300. Okay, it's really cheap. And it's getting cheaper. I mean, at Illumina, where a company that I retired from, their goal was to have the $100 genome. In other words, you could totally build the encyclopedia for that animal or that person or whatever for $100, and then go compare it to databases of DNA sequence and find changes and things that are going on that may suggest a propensity to get a disease or whatever. So we have to prepare for the future. And the fact is that there are lots of smart people in this world, and they figure out how to do things like CRISPR technology, you may have heard, things like that, to go in and they can identify a sequence just with a little enzyme that works, tracks down that patch of DNA. And into the future, who knows what we'll be able to do. But it's all getting faster, all getting cheaper and easier. So that's why we have the database, to prepare for that future, because when that future happens on a daily basis and things come up, they're easier and cheaper to do, then we can find more answers. We can't find them if we don't have the DNA. Okay, we can't do the research without the starting material. We need information in the database, and we need DNA from your dog, and the rest will occur. Okay. Marcia?
This is just a slide to let you know that if you can find your way to the STCA website, there is a link from that website. You can go right to the Health Trust page. And on the Health Trust page, there's a lot more information and choices and information about the DNA bank. There is a FAQ page that really goes into a lot more detail than we've been able to do today, answering lots more questions. And contact information is on the STCA page as well. So it's easy to find, it's easy to navigate, and we're here to answer your questions and help whenever we can.
I think it was real. Okay.
There was a database slide if you want to
Yeah.
go through that briefly. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the process of building this database. It'll be online. You'll have access to it for your dog once we get it all built and inputted, the information you submit. And then in the future, we want to take that burden off of Marcia or whoever's receiving this information, so that you can put it in immediately direct. We can drop you a kit, and you can get that information, that sample in, and it'll all be a lot easier. So right now we have a form that basically is all the possible health questions we could imagine that we could put together. It seemed logical at the time. And it may update, and we may add to it and refine it as we go forward. But anyway, we have a really solid starting point for all that, collecting that information. And we're doing it by hand. And that's getting this database built is our step that we're in, or we started, and we've had some progress on, and then we've backed up and redone it, re-looked at it again. So it's probably something we'll finish by the end of this year of 2023, we hope. and be able to introduce it into all the people that are interested in being a part of this. So on this database, it will have information about all the things that can be known about the dog, the register name, AKC number, what have you. It will be an open database, open access, where people can see this information, but it'll be controlled in the sense that nobody can distribute the DNA, that nobody can just take off and run with information from the database, but it will be open. So Marcia, you want to comment a little bit more on that?
Right. This was approved by the STCA board in 21 that this database would be an open database, a searchable database open to the public. And that means people will be able to look up a dog and find out the health, basically the health information on that dog. What they'll not know or have access to will be any information of the owners or co-owners. No personal contact information will be viewable to the public, and also supporting veterinary documents will be kept as confidential. But the reason for this is to allow people to learn and to understand what's behind their dogs, to understand maybe what is behind the dogs that they are wanting to breed to. The point is to make good decisions, allow breeders to make good decisions, and allow puppy buyers to make good decisions. When they're looking up dogs, they'll be able to find that this family of dogs has been pretty darn healthy family. Now, to be sure, information is only as good as what's put into the database. So there's a certain amount of that you might want to question, but it's still an open database, and people who are straightforward and deal honestly with people will be very completely agreeable to enter this information on the database.
I think this really is a valuable piece for the future of the breed, is to have people be able to discover, how should I manage my Scottie dog? As we've unraveled some of the complexities around diseases, both genetic and environmental, and things that happen over the course of lifetime, we'll be able to go back in and flag and say, these dogs, you should feed them this, or these dogs should be managed this way, and they'll have a happier life. This allows us to share that information back so that people know how to take care of their dogs and how to manage them, how to look after them so they are happy and healthy. We all have our own, every one of us on this seminar today, we have inherited things that we don't even know about until maybe some are along the way of life, or some as we get older, like me right now, and we find that we have these problems. But if we know them up front, like for instance, if you have diabetes, if you know that you're going to have diabetes later in life, then you can manage your upfront and postpone the ill effects of that, and maybe avoid them altogether. Same thing can happen in an open database, is if we know some of these problems and we can offer solutions, doesn't mean the dogs can't be used in the breeding programs, just means we manage them a little differently. Okay. So it's not as detrimental as it is, I think, quite beneficial.
Okay. And final thoughts for this presentation today. This is just, again, the view of the chart showing the health issues that were reported in our survey 6 years ago. And the only reason I brought this up was because we are all together on this call today. We all love our Scotties. It doesn't matter if we're, again, breeding, not breeding, showing, members of STCA or not. We all share these wonderful dogs, share our lives with these wonderful dogs. And this is the important part. These health issues and others that are commonly seen This is what the Health Trust is all about. And this is the purpose of the DNA Bank, is to be able to focus research, focus our dollars, the Health Trust dollars, on research that really will benefit our dogs. And one more down, Michael.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There you go.
And for the breeders, it does take honesty and a certain amount of courage to share your dog's health information for the public to see. Your breeding program, our breeding programs may or may not be what is best for the breed, but what is best for the breed will always be good for your breeding program. In other words, whatever decisions you make, if it really is the best for the breed in the future, not just our dogs and what we're trying to do with them, it can only be good. It will always be good for you, for your dogs, and for the future. And again, the DNA Bank and the health database are a legacy for the future. It's what we're leaving behind for the future of this breed and the owners and breeders that come down in the future. So an important legacy, and you can be a part of it.
I think what we're doing here is setting the stage so that people can enjoy Scotties 100 years from now, 200 years from now, we don't know, but at least we're making contribution going forward, paying forward, and providing a database, capabilities that are foundational for the future. Other breeds of dogs have joined in this mission. We're not alone now. Since we started this, there's one that's full-blown, same kind of program, for the same kind of reasons. There's 2 or 3 others I know of that are coming online, and they're all with the same thought about how can we preserve our breed for the future, and what's best what information do we need to collect and maintain and provide for people so that they can have a good experience with our dogs. So I think it's been a great step forward for Scottish Terriers. Marcia and I reminisced here earlier in the week when we spoke about this, about how far we've come. We had nothing. I mean, we basically put it all together 6-7 years ago. We started and kind of have come this far. We've got a lot further to go, but we have some really good tools in place, and we've got to step, and we're moving in a direction. So we invite your input. We invite your thoughts, your comments, your questions, because they all contribute to making it better for our Scotty dogs in the future.
I think that's the last. Is there one more slide?
We have the nice little Scotty wearing a sweater, which out here you need a sweater and maybe some bib overhauls, but poor old Gus, he just jumps out. My Gus is 7 years old, and he just dives right out into the snowbanks. The other day he was somehow found his way up on top of a snowbank and on top of a big round bale of hay, and he was staring down at me as I was taking care of the water in the cattle tank. So I said, well, how in the world did you get up there? So never think that a Scotty dog can't get along in tough weather, because they're tough dogs.
Well, Michelle?
Alrighty, you guys did a fabulous job. I have been tingling listening to the scope of this project, and I'm so proud to be a trustee along with both of you. And I have to tell you, at one point we had 53 people on. So we've got a few questions that I'm just going to go over with you, and let me just pull those up. One question here is, and by the way, I've already gotten emails requesting kits. Will you share your information regarding how you got this process started with other breeds? And I think, Michael, you spoke to that, but could you just reiterate that?
Yeah, we've already shared quite a bit of it. A lot of those other breeds that have going to Rosero now, but mostly Marcia and I, we put a lot of grunt work, if I can use that word, putting those documents, defining how we're going to do things, yes, we are sharing it. We will share it because we hope that they will reciprocate with us and share when they figure out something. But we're all in this together, I guess, is a kind of common phrase. But we're just happy to be able to do it, and we'll share it.
Great, thank you. One question about was this being recorded and posted? And yes, the program has been recorded. I hope to get it on the Health Trust Fund Facebook page by tomorrow morning, and it will also be hopefully posted on the Door County Scottie Rally website to get additional information. And the other piece is, if you're not currently following the Health Trust Fund page on Facebook, I encourage you to do so, because you'll be kept abreast of additional information down the road.
That's a good point.
Let's see. One question I had is that if the blood of a Scottie has already been banked, is there any value in submitting a tissue sample post-mortem, particularly if there's been a new diagnosis since that blood banking?
No, actually, the DNA never changes. Whatever we capture a piece of DNA, whatever's in that DNA, that code. What's more important is a very good pieces of information that you've gotten and you put in that database.
Right.
Because when the day comes that we can unravel that DNA and figure out an answer from the DNA, if there is one there, that information will help direct us very much. So the DNA is a one-time thing. It doesn't change, and it's the same. There are other factors in the dog that change, how genes are expressed, maybe some, I don't want to get people confused, but there's some imprinting things that change over time of controlled gene expression. But the DNA is the code of life, and it doesn't change. So as quickly as you can get that in the database, you have preserved that encyclopedia for that dog. And we can use it. We don't need you to send other samples in. We need you to record your information.
Right.
As the dog gets older, every year on the first of the year, when you make your New Year's resolution, you go to the database and update the information on your dog. That would be great.
Someone posed a question that's interesting. Why would someone not want their DNA sample to be included?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't answer that, Marcia.
Does that,
Why not?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Does that person mean not included in the DNA bank period, or not included in the Health Trust managed program?
Either way.
Either way.
Yeah.
Well, there are people, I think, who are pretty leery of DNA being available to other people. I think for their own DNA. I think there are people that are very leery of some of these DNA businesses out there that take their DNA and what happens to that data. You know, I think there's some people that feel uncomfortable about someone else having control over either their own DNA or their dog's DNA. And that's,
Well,
maybe that's at the heart of that question. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
I'll weigh it in on that one a little bit. I think we've taken super precaution there to make sure that people have informed consent as to how that DNA gets used. I mean, they give it to us, but we don't really, like I said earlier in the presentation, the HTF manages it, and we have certain constraints around that management. And when we put that DNA into a research project, it's on a blind basis. They're not going to know whose DNA it is. They're just going to know that it's in the study, and this is what we know about that dog. So we've thought through this pretty well, and it's not like we're exposing anybody to any outside information. It's just making DNA available to do a research project, not a name of a kennel, a name of a person, even the name of the dog. the sample will be known by a number, and that's it. So there's really no concern of putting your DNA into the database to manage the DNA base. If we go into a research study, you're going to know about it with your sample. You're going to know. You're going to be able to say, that's great, keep me informed. But it's going to be between you and the people managing the database. If that's Marcia, myself, or a research committee, that's the only people that are going to know which dog is what in a sample, in a study.
Thank you. Another question, is the DNA sample without further health information on the Scottie still useful? I am concerned about how many people will follow up with additional health information.
I would say that the initial information is critical. You know, everything when you submit that sample that you know, it would be out of this world if you did, like I said, every year on New Year's Eve, updated your database and added information, or anytime there was a health event that you wanted to record, that would be great. The initial sample and all that information you might know about your dog is important, but no, it's not like you have to do that. But let's put it this way, a DNA sample with no information is just a DNA sample. It means nothing. So this is when you're going out to discover things, you've got to be able to link the code of life with the event of life and be able to find the correlation, and then be able to identify that mutation that's causing the event of life to change, right? But if I don't know what the events are and I don't know anything about it, that DNA, it'll just be a sample of DNA, right? So information's good. You don't have to update, but if there's information you can provide when you input it, there could be some valuable pieces there, for darn sure. Yes.
And just as a quick note, I have already had people contact me. They've sent an email to give me a health update on the dogs that they have already sent in their questionnaire on. And of course, I'm saving those with those forms. So people are willing to do this. They're willing to update their dog's information, which is really important. That's the purpose of our online database, to make it easy for people. So that they can pop on there, make a change, and then be done. And that's the point of making it as easy as we can. So.
Next question, are there additional costs to us after the initial with submission of the kits or of the tests? Sorry.
The once you have submitted your sample, if you've chosen to be in the managed account, the STCA, HTF assumes a lot of that cost, and there is no additional. Marcia, you can jump in there on clean that up. But
there will, in the future, we hope, be the ability to order genetic tests through the DNA bank. And should that come to pass, then you'll be able to order a VWD test or a CMO test, or we hope in the future a Scottie cramp test on the dogs that already are banked in the DNA bank. And that will be a small cost. That will be a relatively minor cost.
I guess, I forgot to look at it from that angle. If you submit your sample on your dog and you want to have information from that dog register with SCHIC, is it SCHIC, right? That's how I pronounce that?
SCHIC.
And we've made arrangements that at the lab, they can create that information, and then you would be responsible for that, for those, whatever. If you want to participate in the SCHIC database, then they will, SCHIC will accept the results from Rosero on that sample. And then there's a special reduced rate for the test because you've submitted the sample and it's already in DNA form at Rosero. They discount the cost of running that test. And actually, they can run the multiple tests in one run. You don't have to do one separate runs for all of them. And that would be the responsibility of the person who owns the DNA. Yes. But for discovery of new mutations or anything like that, no. You're not a part, you don't have to contribute to any research projects. That's a part of the HTF. So I think I've answered that, Marcia. Did I miss any points there?
I think so. And one more quick thing. We're really going longer than we should here, but if a person decides that they want to move their own dog's sample out of Bracero, out of the DNA bank, there will be a charge for them to ship that sample wherever they want it to go.
Yeah.
That will have to go, obviously, in a freezer pack overnight shipping. So that would be an extra charge or another charge, a new charge to that person if they decide they don't want to stay with the HTF DNA bank.
Okay, since we can't read DNA, how will we know as an owner if something health-wise is in question?
Let's see, how do I? We can't read DNA. Well, when we have a test for something, that information is derived through research, and then we can apply those tests to the samples that are submitted in the study, and those results will be transferred back. If we have a test for future dogs that we develop, we have discussed with Bracero, as we did with the Scotty cramp study, that we would have a period of time to offer that test to our clientele, our people that want to test dogs, specifically if they're a member of the STCA, at a special reduced rate, and provide those results directly to them. So I think I've kind of answered that. Marcia, what do you think? Have I kind of hit that?
I think so.
No, what I'm trying to ask is, would we be alerted if something in the DNA we sent is a problem or something we could change diet, etc.? Because we sent the sample in, but since we have access to the DNA, it's not, I'm not able to read it.
No.
Somebody translates saying, hey, you know, like I get an email or something saying your dog showed up with parvo or something. I don't know. She's got her parvo shots. It's just something I'm very health ignorant.
I think we will communicate on a broad scale any information we have that will allow people to identify those dogs and certain traits that are affected by environmental things and nutrition. And will that be automatic from the database? We really haven't experienced that yet, and where we would take individual animals' DNA and feedback to the customer any recommendations. That may be something we take up in the future. Come back and say, you've got a dog that we suspect da-da-da-da, and you should manage it this way. I don't know. We haven't really addressed that. Marcia?
Yeah, I think that's one of the possibilities for future discussion. But you can't look at a dog's DNA and say, you know, this dog has parvo or this dog has roundworms or something like that. It isn't a health screen in that sense. This is looking at the foundational genetic material of an individual. And that isn't where you find those things. The DNA is used, as Michael said, when you have a test and when you can find a genetic test.
We may
test it.
We may someday be able to identify a particular trait. I'm thinking of in the sheep industry where I'm closely involved. There's the susceptibility genes, and there's they were to some brain lesions or vacuoles that caused animals to become disoriented and emaciated and da 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 da. And we identified in those animals that were susceptible to this, whatever was causing it, at a certain locus. They call it the codon 171. And that might be what you're thinking of. We read the DNA. We know that, hey, if that genotype is, for instance, in this particular case, QQ, your animal's more susceptible to have this problem. If you're a QR, Q meaning you got it, or you got the mutation, or R mean you don't, because you get 2 copies, one from the mother, one from the father. Well, then you might be not susceptible, but if you mate that animal with another QR, then you would be RR or QQ, and then if you're QQ, you are susceptible. So it became a guiding principle, a guiding piece of information as people were making mating decisions in order to avoid susceptibility for something. And I have seen evidence throughout in both sheep and cattle and others where certain things with worms and things like that, there are some islands of DNA that are being discovered that people can use that suggest that if you do select these animals with these genotypes, they will be less susceptible to certain nematodes and things like that. That may happen in dogs, and but that'll be down the road. And that's why it's so important, because we're kind of trotting along in new ground here with dogs. Lots of research going on, but it's very new ground for something like this. That's why the information on your dog is so important. That if you record that information, then we'll be able to, in the future, maybe identify some very key markers that'll be predictive of susceptibility for some of these diseases.
Okay. This person has a chick number and you have her bitch's DNA already. Are you saying I can contact Chick to get info from the people storing the DNA?
If she has already a chick number on her Scottie, that dog has been tested already for VWD, and maybe CMO, has done a thyroid test, has had a patella exam, and has a permanent microchip number, which makes it eligible to be in the chick data registry, which is a database with OFA. We have the sample. Do we have a sample, did you say, of this dog's
Yes.
DNA in the bank?
Yep.
Okay. So at this point in time, there's really no reason to worry about contacting anything between Rosero and Chick, because she already has her chick number. What Michael was talking about was if we could get those testings, that test available with the DNA bank, then that information can be sent to Chick to help establish a Chick number on that registry. So
maybe I was unclear about that, but the CMO, the VWD, Rosero can provide those results. If you have your dog and you want to send in the sample and you want it to go to Chick, Rosero can do those tests, and Chick will accept, the OFA will accept the data coming from Rosero.
the results of the tests, right?
So you don't have to do another sample. You just send that sample. They take care of it, give you the results. They will charge you to run the test at a reduced rate, but the data can be then put in the OFA database, right?
That's
so
correct.
we don't have to take
That's
two samples and go one way or another. Just go
No.
one place, go to Rosero, get it done. They'll distribute the information as you direct them.
Right.
And then it'll be recorded where it needs to be.
And,
that make
and
it-
that, those tests are not available yet. They will be, but they're not rolled out yet with Rosero. But we anticipate that happening fairly soon. So,
Two last questions that I have. Are there any minimal age restrictions at which samples can be submitted?
Birth is a good point to start.
You got another pair of hands that you can get it off the
I
cord.
mean, maybe you can in utero go in and extract DNA, but I would prefer that you let them be born.
right.
I think you'll be all right there.
Okay,
Anytime after that,
okay.
sooner the
And-
better.
Thank you. And last question, do you want samples from litter mates?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Sure.
And information,
Yes.
including that, their pedigrees. So we know they're litter mates.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, I think I've got all the questions that were posed on here. One last request for how do we get the DNA kits? Again, emails for myself are mgbnp1@gmail.com. And Marcia's information or her email is, I'm going to let you say it, Marcia, it's just so I don't get it wrong.
Michael, if you can just scroll back really quickly to
Oh,
that
that would be
slide,
awesome.
that would be easier, then people can write it down.
Thank you.
Okay, where I gotta go? Way up, isn't it?
Not too far, just keep going.
Yes, ma'am.
There,
Whoa,
that was it. Nope.
there we go.
There it goes. Perfect.
That scroller is really fast.
So we'll give people just a second to write that down.
Yeah.
And,
In closing, I'd like to just encourage all of you who attended today, if you could put a post on your Facebook page or whatever and talk about how informative this was. And if you are part of any gathering of Scottie owners, please talk about the potential to do these blood draws as a group. There is that potential to do that. So whether you are part of a rescue organization or a regional club, we want to be supportive of those endeavors.
Right.
Do you have any parting comments from either of you? You did a great job. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us and
Right.
participating. And we don't have all the answers, but we'll try to find the answer to the question you have if you contact us. And I'm going to jump off of this and go move some snow. And if you're inclined, come on out and help me.
Thank you, everybody. We enjoyed our time with you. Thank you for taking part of your Saturday to join us. So
Have a great weekend.
thank you, Michelle.
Send in your samples, please. Thank you.
Thank you,
It
sir.
all matters.
Oh,